I'm a lot more gray than Steve is.
Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato, and I'm here with my co-host, Steve Anderson. And tonight we have a very special guest. It's Army-Navy week, and we have the quarterback of the 1996 team, Ronnie McAda, with us. Not just the 1996 team, right, Ronnie? A quarterback for one of the best quarterbacks in Army football history. Let's just say it, Steve. Let's just get it out there right now. So we have Ronnie McAda. Thanks. We appreciate you coming on, Ronnie.
Appreciate it. Glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ronnie, it's a big week, Army Navy. So I think it's pretty fitting that we got a guy that's had quite some success against Navy in his career on tonight. So if let's just talk about this week. What's this week got in Ronnie McAda's life? Where are you watching the game on Saturday, and who are you watching it with?
I'll be watching at home with my kids. I still got kids playing sports, high school sports. In fact, we got basketball on Saturday, so I'll be working it around that. But yeah, usually I have two older boys. One's at SMU, one's a senior in high school, and then I have a daughter that's a freshman. So we'll find a place either here or out at a restaurant or something, but we'll catch the game somewhere.
That's awesome. Right there with you. I got a 6-year-old basketball game kicking off at 12 Mountain Time, so we're gonna have to get out of there quick. They're about 50 minutes, so
I have done that many a time. In fact, I was coaching on the sidelines in fourth grade, fifth grade girls basketball game, and my wife hollers at me from across the stands, "Army won!" And I'm start jumping up and down on the sidelines or on the bench over there because we won.
Hopefully your team was winning at that time, so it didn't look like you were cheering that.
Right.
Or something like that. So, Ronnie, I'm going to start with a quick story. I was a junior at West Point, and we all, Ben Calweek, Coach Calweek, big mentor of mine, coached me at prep school, instilled in us a lot of the same things you guys kind of preached on that 96 team, 97 class, because that's what he knew Army football could be. And my prep school year was 2006, and as we know, there were some dark times in the early 2000s with Army football, and that's, the passion Coach Calweek led the defensive team, or the prep school guys with, was something that he said was how you guys, every single day, that was the mentality you guys had. So I heard stories about, obviously, Ronnie McAda, the quarterback. Everybody remembers the quarterback. But I'll never forget, fast forward 3 years later, you're in the weight room at the Kinsey Center, and I hear you talking to Satan, Coach Swanson, and I know it's you, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go introduce myself to Ronnie McAda, and I totally chickened out. And I was like, you know what? I'm not worthy yet. We're gonna do something special this next year, and maybe I'll gain the courage to introduce myself. Sure enough, that next year we won a bowl game, and I was like, man, I couldn't introduce myself.
That's pretty funny, right there. You should have come and introduced yourself.
You had, Ronnie, like you were the standard of when I grew up as an Army football player, of what an Army quarterback was: tough, determined, resilient, decisive, right? Athletic, all those things. They were a little intimidating to an 18, 19-year-old football player who thought he was pretty impressive himself. So, it was funny when it came down to, making it happen. I was like, I'll just do it later. I don't want to bother him. He looks busy.
You should have come up and said hello. I'm sorry that you were that intimidated, because I would have gladly put my arm around your neck and given you a big old hug. So
yeah. So it's good to catch up now. And just on that note, Ronnie, kind of how we want to just start is what lured you to West Point, and then obviously a lot of things what kept you there, because it's not the easiest place to stay when you're an athlete and you got people flirting with you to come play for them somewhere else. And then just kind of talk us through your kind of your path from like underclassmen to being one of the senior leaders on the Army football team.
Sure. Yeah, I actually have a pretty unique story, honestly, and because my freshman year, my plebe year, I never dressed for a single football game, not one. In fact, people always ask me, Army Navy games. The first Army Navy game I ever saw, I was in the stands. I sat through it, and that first year was tough for me because, I came out of Mesquite, Texas, which was a pretty big football program. The reason I went to West Point, one of the reasons I went to West Point, I blew out my knee my junior year in high school. I was getting recruited by everybody, back then, and letters from here and letters from there, and thought I was big time, thought I was a big time guy, and blew out my knee my junior year. And of course, back then, that was in 1991. And back then, you blew out your knee. A lot of people thought your career was over at that point.
Yeah.
So, the letters quit coming. But one thing that kept my interest and kept coming was West Point. And the funny thing is, I didn't know anything about West Point. In fact, my head football coach in high school, Mickey Delamar, called me into his office one day and said, "Hey, have you filled out these information letters for West Point?" And I go, "Coach, I don't even know what West Point is." And he said, "Boy, let's sit down and talk." So, and we had, in high school, I got moved up my sophomore year to play quarterback on the varsity in high school. We ran the wishbone my sophomore and junior year, but I had a decent arm. So my senior year, we actually went to the run and shoot offense. So went from the wishbone to the spread bone my junior year, or to the spread option, and then to the run and shoot my senior year. So I had done a little bit of everything through there. And so when Coach Delamar kind of explained to me what West Point was, I was very interested in the academic side. I wanted a high academic school, so that definitely intrigued me. Didn't know a whole lot about the military, even though my dad was in Vietnam. He never talked about it. We never had discussions about it or anything. He didn't have anything displayed, not even a picture of himself in the Army, So we just weren't a military family that talked about it. And even though him and my grandfather were both in the Army. And so I went for a visit to West Point, and we have a big crosstown rival here, North Mesquite. So the North Mesquite game every year is a huge game. And when I went on my recruiting trip, obviously they showed me a clip of the Army Navy game, right? And I'm sitting there watching that going, wow, this thing is 100 times, my mind as a high school kid, I'm like, this is 100 times bigger than the North Mesquite game. And I was like, I'd love to play in that one day. And so really it boiled down to, I wanted a high academic school. I wanted to play D1 football. And with everything else that went on, West Point was kind of my only choice at that point, unless I was going to go walk on somewhere, because Missouri had decided not to sign me. A&M had decided not to sign me. Rice had canceled my trip the day I was supposed to go on the trip. So it was kind of left my only option. And my dad was like, well, you can go walk on at A&M, but you're going to walk on. They're not going to give you much of a look. You're going to have to get a job because I'm not paying for everything there. And you're going to be working your butt off just to try to make a team. And I was like, West Point looks pretty good. I think I'll go there because I don't have to until they shaved my head and, put me in black socks and, Buddy Holly glasses and make you walk around like an idiot. But then you lay in bed that first night going, what in the world did I get myself into, right? And nobody else experiences that. Nobody else that goes to college, unless you go to one of the academy, experiences that. Steve, you know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, it's crazy.
Yeah, the old shaved head, book in hand.
Yes.
Just looking not looking quite like an athlete.
No, not at all.
I guess
nothing like an athlete. And I wasn't much of an athlete back then anyway. I was 6'3" and came out of high school at 175 pounds. So I looked like a beanpole already. So you put black socks up to my knees, and I really looked like a beanpole at that point.
Yeah.
So
lollipop on top of shoulders.
Yes, exactly.
Long, skinny neck with his cue ball.
And big old ears. I had big old ears, until my head finally grew into it a little bit. But so anyway, so I end up at West Point, and I get there, and I'm looking at the depth chart, looking at everybody that's there, and we got a lot of quarterbacks, a lot. And by the time we actually start practicing, I realized that, hey, I'm number 9 on the depth chart on this thing. I'm never going to see the field here. Never. I was 3rd on the depth chart out of the plebes that were there. There were 2 plebes ahead of me. So I hardly got any reps whatsoever as a plebe. Coach Gregory was our offensive coordinator. Great X and O's guy. But, man, the first day we came back to actually go do football practice, we had to run the 40. And this is coming through Beast Barracks, right? I think I ran a 5.1 in basketball shoes is what I wore. And he came up to me after that and he goes, son, you'll never play for me. You're just too daggum slow. Well, of course, here I am going, man, I was a 3-year starter at a big-time program in Texas football, and I'm not going to get a shot here. So I'm already, talking to myself saying, you ain't going to make it. You ain't going to make it. And so obviously the phone calls start happening with the dad, and hey, coach says I'm not any good. And he's like, man, you haven't even been to practice yet. What do you mean you're not any good? He's like, you got to, pick it up, son. It's time to grow up and be a man. And I'm like, yeah, but, there's some other schools out there that'll look at me. I need to, maybe go transfer somewhere else. He said, you ain't doing nothing. You're staying right there. And, of course, I had a high school girlfriend. She and I were still talking. She was in high school. She was a year behind me. So you know how that is. You got the puppy love going on.
Yeah, we lose. There's always a few football players who lose to that situation every year.
Absolutely. And it's funny because my parents told her, they're like, you do not tell him to come home. Do not tell him to come home. And she never did. She never once told me to come home. In fact, she ended up becoming my wife. We've actually been married now for 23 years.
2% club. All right.
Yeah, she did a really good job of, making sure that she never told me to come home. Even though she told me, she said, I wanted to tell you 3 or 4 times to come home, but I never did.
Yeah.
But, so we did that long distance relationship. She was at the University of Texas and me in New York. But so anyway, I go through plebe year 9th on the depth chart and not getting any practice. I mean, I'd get in there for scout team reps on occasion, but every time I did, I'd screw up or something, and coaches are hollering at me, telling me to get out of there, or they're telling me to run it again after we've done it, and then you get killed because the defense knows exactly what you're doing. And, Slomka and those guys are freaking, sticking you in the ground and stepping on you and whatever, having a lot of fun with the plebes. But it was a lot, I remember Slomka very well because he played defensive line. And as I got a little better and got a little bit more practice time later on in the season, I would make fun of those guys, and I'd go up and say stuff, under center. I can't say it here on the podcast, but, I might call their mom something or something like that, while I'm doing the cadence, and of course get them all riled up and pissed off at us. And then I'd say, hey, somebody else, you come in and play quarterback now. So I could go stand over there and they could get killed. But we had a lot of fun with that, a whole lot of fun. And still, when I see those guys at games and stuff, they still come up and I harass them about all that, and they harass me. So that's a good time. But I seriously did not expect to play, didn't expect to have a shot or do anything. Like I said, never dressed out for a game plebe year, not one. All the other quarterbacks did. In fact, I think all the other plebes did. If I look back on it, everybody that stayed around, everybody got to dress out for a game except for me. And, I rode the bus. Go ahead.
The fuel, man. The fuel. I'm watching you retell it. And it's like I
got sweat coming off my forehead talking about it,
Yeah, I can see that. It fueled you to do something about this. Like, this is not going to be my path.
Well, it's kind of funny because I really didn't know what my path was right then. I had Heath Bates who was a year ahead of me. He was class of 96. He was on scout team. And after the season, when we got into spring ball, I was still running scout team, getting more reps now because they actually moved one of the freshman quarterbacks or plebe quarterbacks and moved him over to running back. Me and another guy were kind of taking turns. Charles Kane were taking turns doing reps. Well, all of a sudden, Heath Bates and I started connecting. I mean, we were tearing up the defense on pass plays. We were tearing up the defense on option plays. You name it. We were just having fun out there. We kind of made a game out of it, just he and I. And we just started tearing up the defense. Well, next thing I know, Gregory comes up to me and he goes, man, I don't understand this, but you're the fastest quarterback I have getting from the fullback to the read key. He said, so keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. And, of course, that's the first time I ever felt like, hey, I got some hope here. Maybe I get to do something. And plus people started moving around. You had your seniors graduate. So I think I went from 9th on the depth chart. I think we lost 2, so maybe 3. So I went to like 6 and eventually to 5. I was really hoping to get to that 4 because, if you're 4th on the depth chart, at least you get to travel. And the big thing about traveling, Steve, is you get the heck out of West Point on Friday night, right? You get to at least go to the hotel, in Mahwah, New Jersey, or if you're traveling, you get to get on that bus or that plane and just get out of there and get the stress out of being at West Point off of you and being a part of the team. So, at the end of spring ball, I was actually number 4 on the depth chart, and I was the top sophomore on the depth chart. So I had 2 seniors. I had Mike McCovic and I just went blank. Rick Roper. They were the 2 seniors. And then you had Steve Carpenter, who was a junior, and then you had me. And Steve Carpenter had also been moved to running back, so he was kind of playing running back since he was 3rd on the depth chart. But Roper and Mike McCovic were the two starting quarterbacks, and so I was just kind of along for the ride, having a good time at this point. Just kind of buying my time and figuring here in the next couple of years I'm going to get a shot. But we go into the season and that gum Rick Roper, 6th play of the first game, tears his ACL. So all of a sudden I go from 4th to 3rd. And second game of the season, we played Duke on national television, and Mike McCovic gets the start. And then the second quarter, I believe, he rolls his ankle real bad. So Steve Carpenter goes in. He plays the 3rd quarter. Duke was a really good team that year. They battled against Florida State for the ACC championship. So we ended up getting killed on national television. But I did get to go in the 4th quarter. In fact, Lee Corso is one of my favorite guys because he was actually announcing that game. He didn't know how to say my name. He kept calling me McAda. But he kept saying, I like this McAda kid. I think this McAda kid can do something. Maybe he'll be starting by the time they get to the Navy game, because he's a big Navy guy. So I always liked Lee Corso, but he butchered the heck out of my name. And I went in the 4th quarter. We're getting killed. And for some reason, we decided, hey, we're going to run play action pass. That's a good idea when you're getting killed. So I throw 2 interceptions against Duke in my 1 quarter that I got to play. So it's not like I had a great showing coming out there for Duke. So why Lee likes me, I had no idea. So then we go into week 3. We play Temple at home. Steve Carpenter, the junior, he starts the game. And after the first quarter, we're down 12 or 13 to nothing. I think we have negative yards of offense. We're just not doing anything. We're not moving the ball at all. The next thing you know, Gregory's like, McAda, you're in. Start 2nd quarter. Let's go. And I remember this to this day. I remember running out on the field, and the fans at Michie Stadium just went nuts. They gave me a standing ovation. They were cheering. The hair sticking up on my arms. I go in, I'm pumped up. I'm like, hey, this is my shot. I'm going to do something here. And the very first play, I throw an interception. Throw a pick. Trying to hit Ron Thomas down the right sideline on a wheel route and throw an interception. Luckily, we shook that off. We actually came back in that game. We took the lead. Should have won the game. They kicked a field goal on us at the end to beat us. But I had a good game, especially running the option. Kind of solidified myself as, hey, this may be a guy that can do something here. And ended up finishing out that season. Mike McCovic came back at the end of the year, but they left me in as a starting quarterback. And then Army-Navy, they rotated us back and forth, which was great because it was his senior year. I was glad he got an opportunity to do that. But that was a close game. I think we beat Navy that year 22-20. That was the first opportunity I had to play in an Army-Navy game. And so it's totally different from being in the stands as a plebe to now all of a sudden having that opportunity to play in that game. And I remember the first half of that game, my legs felt like spaghetti. I could not get my body because I was so excited and so nervous at the same time to play in that game. I could not get my body under control during that first half. In the second half, I came out a lot better. Man, I just remember my legs just feeling like they could never get underneath me during the first half of that game. That's how exciting that game was. But, man, what a blast. And then, then obviously from there, I got to play the next 2 years and was injury-free for most of that. I had a really bad high ankle sprain my senior year, missed a couple games. Adam Thompson came in and got to play a couple games, which was good for him. But, man, we had a good junior year. Everybody talks about our senior year because we were 10-2. But if you go back and look at the 95 season, I mean, we had a much tougher schedule in 95. We went 5-5-1 that year. But we played the University of Washington at Washington. We led the entire game until the very end. And then we lost by 8, and we were on the 1-yard line getting ready to score. That was probably the loudest stadium I'd ever been in. They had set up extra bleachers because they were playing Notre Dame the week after us. And then they ended up selling out our game. So the end zone we were going down to, they had put bleachers all in that end zone. And it was so loud that the offensive lineman could not even hear me call the cadence.
Mm.
Wow.
And so we ended up losing that game by 8. We played Boston College that year at Boston College. We went in there and just beat the dog out of them. We were at 42-0 at half. I'm sure y'all know of a guy named Matt Hasselbeck, played quarterback for Seattle and the Green Bay Packers. So that was his first start. He was a sophomore that year. I'll give you a story on that in a minute. But we ended up beating them 49-7. I think ESPN even said at halftime, they're like, hey, this is not a misprint. Army is actually beating Boston College 42-0. And then we tied Rice that year, which was actually a bad tie. We should have beat them pretty good. East Carolina beat us by 6, and they were a bowl team that year. Air Force, we went into Air Force. We jumped up on Air Force 14-0. And I'll tell you the difference between that junior year and that senior year. The junior year team, we weren't very good in the previous years. We actually had a good team that year. We just didn't know how to win. We would get a lead and we wouldn't keep it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Ronnie, I feel very similar about my junior and senior year, man. Because we had guys like Ali Villanueva, we had Vicky Guinea, we had Ted Bentler, we had all these guys, but we weren't used to winning.
Yeah.
3-9, 0-12.
Yeah.
Like those are the histories. We went 5-7, and there was 3 games that year that we could have won that game. We could have easily been 7-5. And we just couldn't hold on to the lead, or we couldn't finish a game, or we cost ourselves. And it was actually those juniors there that experienced that, that grew from that, right?
Yeah.
And that's what propelled us into finally a 6-6 season that allowed us to go to a bowl game and win a bowl game.
And that's exactly
what happened. Ronnie, it's funny you say this, right? Because you're 5-5-1. You're sitting there looking like, hey, that was a better team. It's just history doesn't remember, losers, man. They only remember winners.
They don't remember that. They don't remember the 5-5-1, even though we were probably just as good of a team that year as we were the next year.
I 100% agree with you.
And
Ronnie.
the schedule just wasn't quite as tough the next year, and we ended up 10-2 that year. I mean, we played good ball, and I don't think we had a close game all year, but we learned how to get over that hump. We lost to Notre Dame our junior year, 28-27 at Giant Stadium. We went for 2. That was the year before overtime. There wasn't overtime in college football yet. And I remember we scored with about 1:10 left on the clock, and Coach Sutton was like, well, do we want to kick it for the tie or go for the win? And we're like, we're going for the win. What do you mean? We ain't going for no tie. And we had the perfect play set up for it. And Ron Lashinsky, our tight end, which everybody knows him, he's a big-time tight end. He came off the line of scrimmage and was supposed to get 1 yard deep in the end zone. And their outside linebacker hit him right across the face and knocked his helmet sideways. So he was looking through his ear hole. So when he turned, he got confused on where he was and didn't know. And by the time he got squared up and I threw him a pass, hit him right in the chest. He catches it. He thinks he's in the end zone. He turns, and little Ivory Covington from Notre Dame hits him and knocks him out of bounds at the 6-inch line. And lo and behold, you got the college football defensive play of the year, and we lose 28-27. But like I said, we had a good squad that year too.
Right.
It just gets overlooked because of the 10.
What about talk to me about kind of how the seniors were that year as a junior, right? You're sitting there as a junior, you're going through that season, and you're like, all right, like every athlete, especially at West Point, goes through this, like, all right, this is my last year. All right. Yeah. So I got to be better, not just on the field, but I got to be a better leader because this is our last chance to get this right. Can you talk about kind of the core group of junior leaders that kind of really stepped up as seniors and held people accountable, and just kind of how you transition from that junior leader, your starting quarterback, right? Kind of like you are the leader, but you're the informal leader because most football teams consider seniors the leaders of the team, to where now you're the starting senior quarterback, and kind of talk about that dynamic a little bit.
Well, I will say, my junior year, we had great senior leadership. Joel Davis was our offensive captain.
Man, I was one of the first people Ben Cowika brought to our prep school to meet was Joel Davison. Man, is he See
He's
a
massive.
giant man and a giant
He
personality.
showed up in Mesquite, and my dad owns a used car lot in downtown Mesquite. He showed up in Mesquite and opened the door, and my dad said when he walked through the door, there was no sunlight coming through. He just took up the entire frame. But yes, he was a beast of a man. Probably one of the biggest human beings I've ever seen, especially a cadet I've ever seen. But anyway, he was a great offensive captain. Him and Eddie Stover, two big offensive linemen that we had. And then you had Jim Cantaloupe on the defensive side, who was a safety captain. I mean, he was a born leader. So we had great senior leadership that year, which actually helped us. Ben Kotwika and Ron Lashinsky, those were our two offensive and defensive captains. And then you have myself, who's a 3-year starter as well at quarterback. Lashinsky was a 4-year starter on offense. So we just kind of took the reins from those guys. They handed it down to us, and we just kept going with what they taught us. The big thing for us was, we can't look ahead at any other team. We can't look ahead at Syracuse. Can't look ahead at Air Force. Can't look ahead at Navy. We had to take every game one game at a time. So our motto back then was 1-0, which I'm sure we could talk to y'all about whenever y'all were at the prep school. But we broke it down even smaller than that. It was 1-0 in practice. 1-0 for the week, 1-0 for the day, 1-0 for the week, 1-0 for the game. And that was just our motto throughout the year. And it started that way. And it's funny because when we started, I think we played Miami. We played University of Ohio the very first week, and we got down 14-0 like that. And of course, everybody said, "Oh, here we go, same old Army team, going to have another 5-5 season or something like that." And we all got together on the sidelines and said, "Hey, wait a second, we worked way too hard for this. Let's do what we're capable of doing." And I think that kind of turned our season around because we went out and we just beat the living dog out of them the rest of the game and left no doubt. And from then on, every game was that way until we ran into Donovan McNabb and Syracuse in the Carrier Dome. And I'll be honest with you, they beat us. I think they beat us 42-17, but it was a closer game than that. We could move the ball between the 20 and 20, and for some reason we would stall every time we got inside the 20-yard line. But it was a hard fought battle between both teams. They had a lot of speed, no doubt, with Donovan McNabb and those guys. But I would say that when we got done and they got done, they looked at us and they were like, "We don't want to play you guys again."
Yeah.
That's the way it was, Steve, with most of the teams that we played. And I'm sure you guys were the same way. But we were going to come tooth and nail. And we were going to battle you the entire game. And when we got done, they were like, "We don't ever want to see you guys again."
I know that 96 team, right, was referenced a lot, especially, Steve, when you played, right? I mean, you always heard about this is the last time it happened was in 1996, right? Through a lot. Right. And now you see the success that Army's having under Jeff Monk and Ronnie.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but is it nice to see that, there is now a renewed spirit, a winning spirit in Army football, that maybe the 1996 team is not as referenced as much as it was in the past? Or
no, absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's always nice to be referenced, but you want your alma mater, you want your team, you want your brothers to succeed. And year after year, when you're still referenced as the last team to go 10-0, the last team or 10-2, the last team to beat Navy 4 years in a row, that stretch that we had of 14 years in a row of not beating Navy, that was rough. I mean, I would give teams going 12-0, take it all. Forget about the 96 team. Let's just beat Navy every year. I could care less about talking about 96. Let's just beat Navy. That was a rough patch. And Coach Munkin coming in and changing the culture and bringing back the toughness of Army football has been fantastic. And I could care less that they talk about the 96 team. Let's talk about the 2021 team. Let's talk about the 2020 team. Let's talk about those guys because they've done a great job and a lot of success. And it's been fun to watch them grow. It's been fun to watch them beat Navy every year, bring the Commander-in-Chief's trophy home. I mean, we only did that one time. My senior year was the only time we ever held the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. So it's nice to have it, year after year after year, the way they're doing it right now.
Yeah, 0-8 against service academies in my career, so not very exciting there. But the 96 team was part of the motivation of one of our, we had shirts made that said, "Bring it back," right?
Right.
Bring it back. And it referred to bring winning back.
Right.
like I'll never forget when we finally won that bowl game. Coach Ellerson gave me a big hug and he said, "You did it. You brought it back." And I knew how important winning at Army was, because that's all the mentors and all the guys that had come before me said, like, "Hey, it matters, Steve. Winning fucking matters." So that was part of the motivation, was the nice, bringing it back. I mean,
by the way, I was at
guys,
that bowl game.
The first time I met Ronnie was on the sidelines of that game, Steve. I was watching you guys win that game. I was had a few quick words with Ronnie at the final seconds of that game.
I probably would have had the courage after that game to come talk to my son, Ronnie.
I hope so.
I
hope so. You brought it back.
That's awesome. Well, let's here's a good segment. Let's talk about what this week means to Army football and just old grads, Ronnie. We're just old grads now, right?
I know. And getting older. I told my wife today, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the 25th anniversary of the 1996 Army Navy game, which was my senior year." I'm like, she looked at me, she said, "Sorry, honey, you're just getting old."
Well, I just saw Army got the Armed Forces Bowl, right? And I'm like, man, that was 11 years ago. I did that shit 11 years ago.
11 years ago.
Jesus Christ.
That's crazy, isn't it?
I am not. I'm done. I'm washed up, man.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the week. Let's talk about the core. So you guys were preparing for Navy. You guys play in Philly? I'm assuming your year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We played in Giant Stadium freshman year, plebe year, and then Philly the last 3 years.
So let's talk about the kind of like the mentality of going into this week. I know we want to say that it's just another game, 1-0, all that.
It's not another game.
But I kind of always look at this as the beginning of bowl season, right? Army Navy's, for me, I know you had all the conference championships last weekend, but for me, this game is what starts bowl season. It's the only game on. So kind of talk about how you guys, again, leadership challenge, right? Is keeping guys in check, making sure they're doing the right things, and making sure you come away with that W.
I don't ever remember us having a problem with getting ready for a Navy game. It was the one game. 'Cause of course, you got to remember too, we went through 3 years where the most games we won were 5, the first 3 years. So the Army Navy game was obviously our bowl game for those first 3 years. You had to beat Navy. That's the only thing that mattered. I mean, Air Force, beating Air Force was great, but you had to beat Navy. That was the big one. And senior year was a little different. Now we're 9-1 going into this game. They're 8-2 going into this game. It's the first time ever that both academies had at least 8 wins going into the game. Both of us had beaten Air Force, so now we're playing for the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. First time that's happened to us since the 80s. And the winner of that game was going to go to the Poulon Weed Eater Bowl in Shreveport, Louisiana, the Independence Bowl, right? The loser wasn't guaranteed a bowl. So we could have been 9-2 that year and not guaranteed a bowl because there just wasn't as many bowl games back then. So that was a huge, huge game for us.
Yeah.
And, you say you treat it as just a regular, everybody says, "Oh, it's just another game. You're supposed to go." No, man. Everybody knows when you play Navy, it's not just another game. It is the game. It is the only reason that you're there to play football, honestly, is to play against Navy. The rest of the season, you can lose every game. As long as you beat Navy, then everybody's going to be happy. But so it wasn't just another game for us, and I know it wasn't just another game for you. It was the game. And we went into that game even more motivation this year or that year, the senior year. And, we felt prepared. We were ready to get after it. We were ready to go. We were playing 1-0 just like we did every single week. This one was just a lot bigger one than the other ones, And unfortunately for us, we got in there and Navy, they was a good team that year, good squad. And, they jumped up on us 21-3. Don't know if you know this. That's the largest comeback in Army Navy history. Was the 96 game. We're down 18 points, and but nobody ever blinked because we had learned from the previous year how to win. So nobody blinked. I remember when they scored to go up 21-3, Tony Bianchi, which is one of our defensive linemen, came to the sidelines. He had his head down just a little bit. And I remember grabbing him by the face and looking him eye to eye and say, hey, you get your head up, man. We're winning this game. This game's not even close to being over. We're winning this football game. And, man, from right then on, I think that's right after that, I had a 44-yard touchdown run. We got a pick right before half and kicked a field goal. So now we're back in the game. I think it's 21-13 at half. First play of the second half, I pitch it to Bobby Williams. He takes it 80 yards to the house for a touchdown. We go for 2. We run midline option up the middle. I get hit by the linebacker, duck underneath another linebacker, stretch the ball across the goal line, which if they had instant replay like they do now, would have counted. We'd have had that game tied. Ball slipped out of my hand right before I hit the ground. They called it a fumble. But we ended up coming back. Taekwinkle gets a pick later on in the game, and we go on to win that game 28-24. And I will tell you, that is by far the most fun game I've ever played in my entire life. I mean, when it was done, we were completely exhausted, mentally, physically, you name it. And at the same time, I knew playing against the middle linebacker on the other team, Clint Bruce. I played against him in high school. He went to South Garland. He became a Navy SEAL. But I knew how much it meant to him too. And immediately when they blew that whistle, I ran over to him and just put my arms around him because I knew how bad, as good as I felt, I knew how bad he felt. I knew how bad he felt. And I felt so bad for him that he was never going to feel what I felt over the last 4 years of beating the other side. But
well, at the end of the day, better
him than
you
me.
than him. You know what I mean?
That's right. And you know what? He and I still talk about that to this day.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's bonded you guys forever now.
That's right. Well, we actually have a flag football game that we played in a few years later over here in Dallas. Roger Staubach, Chad Hennings, all those guys come out and play. And, this kid that I ran over him our senior year, my 44-yard touchdown run was a midline option up the middle. And I met him face to face, and he went to hit me and knock me out. Well, I just kind of jumped in the air. And when I did, he hit me and I bounced off. And then I went 44 yards for a touchdown. So I just tell everybody I ran him over.
Yeah.
And so when he sees me, he, of course, he's a big old grizzly bear now. And when he sees me, he's like, "You did not run me over." I thought, "Man, go watch the film. Go watch the film."
Sky in the eye don't lie, baby.
That's right. It doesn't lie. So I have a lot of fun with him with that.
Ronnie, do you remember the 4th and 24 play in the Army-Navy game? You remember that
it was
play?
Yesterday.
Yeah.
Like it was yesterday. The funny thing about that, I threw that pass to one of my best friends that I had at West Point, John Graves. Mm-hmm. So John and I were in the same company as plebe. He was a year ahead of me. I was a plebe. He was a yuck. And we were in the same company. He kind of I was a sophomore and he was a junior. It was the second year. But he kind of took me under his wing, took care of me. And we became really tight, really close friends. And so making that pass on 4th and 24 and having the drive, in 95 to beat Navy. Yeah, I mean.
99 yards, right?
99 and a half. They don't give you that half yard. I mean, when the ball was when we got up there to snap it, the ball was about 3 inches away from the goal line. How Navy didn't score and didn't try to run it in or kick a field goal, I have no idea. They tried to throw a stupid pass and incomplete. And then we go 99 and a half yards to beat them 14-13. But yeah,
that's incredible, man. It's just incredible. Like, it's all these cliches that Hollywood acts up and everything. It's like you just said, Ronnie. Like you grab a teammate by the face mask, told him to, hey, get your chin up. Like, we're winning this game. Like, people don't realize how much of an impact that can have from the right person at the right time in a game. Right. And you see it cliched on Hollywood and all these football movies, but like the reason they do that is because athletes do that in real life.
Sure.
And then teams come back.
Right.
And I just think it's I'm still active duty. I'm really passionate about leadership. I still believe the best thing that prepared me to be an infantry officer in the United States Army is Army football. I will 100% argue with anybody about that. And situations like that where guys are sucking, guys are feeling sorry for themselves, or maybe you are, and it takes your brother or it takes someone to pull you up or look at you. It could be a look, it could be a grab, it could be a word, it could be a phrase. But that leadership is why it's so like it's so magnified, especially in those games, and why it matters to have guys that are not afraid to tell other guys, "Hey, we're winning. Like, hey, we didn't suit up today to lose. Let's go."
Yeah. Well, you're talking about that 4th and 24. So I remember in that huddle, it's 4th and 24, and we get in the huddle and they call the play, and Joel Davis looks at everybody and he says, "Give him fucking 3 seconds to throw the goddamn gum football." And they did. They gave me the time to throw it, and John ran a perfect route. And as soon as I released it, I'm like, he's going to score. And I ended up going out of bounds at the 1 yard line because I threw it a little bit too far left. But watching that play, and I don't know if you've ever actually watched the play, but if you watch the live game of it, they pan on John, and then they turn around and they pan it on me. And I give him one of these points. I point at him. And my facial expression and everything is just like, "You're the man." I mean, way to go. And every time I see that, and I'm just talking about it, the hair stands up on my arms. Because it was just such an amazing play at an amazing, crucial time in the biggest game of our life and the biggest game of his life, because it was his senior year. And to be able to pull that off and then eventually score and beat them, I mean, it's I got to be honest with you. I'm very blessed. I played in 3 of the greatest Army-Navy wins that Army's ever had. We played in 3 games with a combined total score win of 7 points, 22-20, 14-13, and 28-24. Every game we played came down to the end, whether it was a field goal or a missed field goal or whatever. But I played in 3. And for years, for 10, 15 years after that, whenever they do the Army-Navy Classics that they put on, one of those games was always on one of those Army-Navy Classics because it was such a tight game every year. So I feel very blessed to not only have gotten to play in the Army-Navy games, but to play in those 3 games.
Incredible. I was going to ask you what you think about Army's current quarterbacks. And because you were talking, Steve, you were talking about that kind of Ronnie possessed everything that you needed in an option quarterback, right? Back then.
Speed. I lacked speed. That's the only thing I didn't have.
Yeah. What do you think of the guys now that are playing quarterback for Army and what they're bringing to the table?
It's kind of crazy. And really it's been this way for the last few years, but it seems like we go through 5 or 6 quarterbacks almost every year.
Yeah.
Every time I watch a game, I'm like, all right, who's this kid? And then next thing I know, the second drive, another kid's in. So back when I played, it was as long as I was healthy, I was playing the whole game. And now, man, there was a time a couple years ago, I think we rotated 4 different quarterbacks through in one game.
Crazy.
And so it was kind of funny to watch. But the neat thing about it is they all bring something different to the table. One of them's a really good thrower. One of them's a really good runner. One can do a little bit of both. And so watching them play, I kind of like the dynamics of it because I always enjoyed the passing side of the option, sucking them in on that option play and then dumping something over their head and making them look stupid. So having a guy in there that can do both, I appreciate that guy compared to just the runner. And you're not going to have just a passer whenever you're running the option. But, even I want to say back, I don't know, the first year that they won 9 games or 10 games and beat Navy.
Yeah.
They had a really good running quarterback.
Bradshaw.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a helmet back here. I think his year, and he signed it for me at the game. But yeah, Bradshaw, man, what a great runner he was, great running quarterback. But the one thing he lacked was the throwing side of the game.
Yeah.
So they had to rely on that running game, which he did an excellent job of. But I always missed the throwing part of that. And so seeing a quarterback like they have right now that can come in and run it and throw it, that's fun for me to watch.
Yeah, Christian Anderson. Man, Ronnie, when you see Army win games without completing a pass or even attempting a pass in the Jeff Monken era, that's just that's crazy stuff, isn't it?
It is crazy. It's crazy to me, again, because I was a thrower. I like to throw the ball. And it's funny because my sophomore year when Mike McAda and I, went in and out, they would say, all right, well, McAda's the thrower and McAda's the runner, but if you go back and watch the game, every time McAda would come in, we would throw the ball. And every time I was in, we would run the ball. So it was complete opposite of what we were supposed to be doing. I think I rushed for 120 something yards in that game. And I don't know that I threw more than 2 passes, but yet he came in and he seemed like he threw every time and hardly had any running stats. So it's kind of a weird deal. But
how about this? How about this comment? Nothing was sweeter than McAda passing the ball over the line when Army had the ball inside the 3-yard line. And the defense is only set up for a run.
Right, set up for a run. Right, I got to look for the big tight end, Ron Lashinsky. Had to hit him, so he can't miss that target. He was a big boy.
No doubt, man. Wow, I mean, we can probably talk forever. It's been really amazing hearing the stories and in the inside stuff that we probably would not know about. You get into West Point, working your way up the depth chart, and just the memories, right, Ronnie? I mean, like you said, I mean, they stay with you, those memories, right? Like you recounting the plays, the drives, the moments is just what this program is all about, right, Steve? The brotherhood, the memories, and just now seeing the program where it's at right now. I mean,
no, it's good. It's really good to have. I mean, we really needed Army back on top where it is right now, and you can't say enough about what Coach Monken and his staff has done. The type of caliber of players that they're bringing in now. Much better athletes than I was back when I played. I mean, I go up there and watch these guys. I'm like, golly, these guys are huge. And, so it's fun to watch every week. I usually just get to watch about the first half. Luckily, we're blowing people out by 21 points usually by then.
Yeah.
It's you don't have to be ashamed of being an Army football player whenever Army's good. Because they're like, oh, you played at Army? Oh, yeah, Army's 8-3 this year, and they're going to play over here in the Armed Forces Bowl. And it's fun to see. It's nice that we can actually beat Air Force on a consistent basis. It's nice that we compete against Navy every year. Even if we don't beat Navy every year, we're competing, and that's the big thing.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I got a really good buddy who I went to West Point with, and he's Ohio State, fan, and he talks about Ohio State, Michigan. And we've got another buddy who went to Ohio State. Obviously he's a Ohio State fan, and he always talks about the game, right? Everybody talks about Michigan, Ohio State's the game,
right.
And I always have to correct them. No, we know what the true game is.
Yes,
right.
We know.
We know.
Really, speaking of Ohio State, little Jackson Smith, the little wide receiver over there, Jackson Smith, and then Jibba number 11.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I coached him in Pee Wee football. He's from right over here in Rockwall. He used to come over to
nice.
Spain.
Now, Ronnie, are you down in Texas?
Yes. I live in Sunnyvale, right outside Dallas, just east of Dallas.
Okay. All right, good. Because when I talk about, I drove through Dallas on my way cross country from Benning to Colorado Springs. It's actually quite a few Army football players in that area. I don't know if you've linked up with any of them, but I know a lot of I know just me personally, there's like 6 of my classmates that are working in Dallas or right outside of Dallas. So
most of my guys are in Houston, it seems like. There's a bunch in Houston, most of my classmates. There's probably
I don't think
out there.
Having a brand new baby boy on Friday, I don't think I'm going to make it down to the Armed Forces Bowl, but I do now know.
Did you name him Ronnie? That's what I want to know, Steve. Did you name him Ronnie?
I didn't. I didn't. We in the Anderson family, I've kept the AA brand, so I've got Ace, Asher, and Arden now. So.
Okay, awesome, man. Congratulations. Yeah. Very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Very cool.
Yeah. So I mean, the Army will play in the Armed Forces Bowl in Dallas in a few weeks. So they play Missouri, and the fan base there. Ronnie, I don't know. Did you get to see the Air Force game in person?
I didn't. My daughter, like I said, is a freshman in high school, and that was her first varsity basketball game. She made varsity as a freshman, so I was over there watching her. So,
God, the things we do for our kids.
Believe me, I know it.
Big fan base in that Dallas area, but for Army football, so it should be well attended. But we got the big game on Saturday versus Navy.
Yeah, Ronnie, we got a watch party out here in Colorado Springs, so I'm bolting straight from 6-year-old basketball straight to the watch party in Colorado Springs, watching it. Big turnout. A buddy of mine who I played football with renting out the bar, so it's going to be only Army and Navy fans in there. So
That'll be a blast.
My wife was, she don't know if she's going to go with the baby. She don't know if it's the right spot. And I'm like, it's literally the only spot he belongs at that
baby
time.
in a bar. It's not that big a deal. Come on.
But I'm bringing my 6 and 5-year-old. I don't care.
There you go. Yeah.
They need to see it. So I'm obviously a big week. I'm excited. Always fun watching Army. I think, just by the nature of what we've done in life, we'll be Army fans, to the end of our time.
Oh, absolutely.
Glad to hear, your kids are athletes. Gives me hope when my kids grow up, they'll be athletes too.
I didn't say they were athletes. I just said they play sports.
Yeah, the Saturdays never end. So
no, they don't.
They awesome. Don't. But Ronnie, it's been great catching up with you, man. I appreciate you coming on and just hey, go Army, beat Navy.
Beat the hell out of them. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed it. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on, Ronnie.
No problem. Y'all